As a leader, you need to paint the picture of what success is for a safe boat. You need to empower every single crew member. You need to empower every single crew member to make safety decisions, to make safety calls. Have the ability and empower them to say, this is unsafe, we need to make, or we need to stop, or make a correction. Success of sailing hinges on the ability for every single crew member to make those decisions. They need to learn the procedures, they need to learn the tools, they need to learn how to do them correctly. An attitude on the vessel should never ever stop learning. People should never ever be afraid to ask questions. No one should ever be criticized for asking a question. But also at the same time, it is the skipper or captain's job to make that final decision. And then underline again, like we just said in early, everyone has to be able to say, stop it. Everybody has to say, stand by. Everybody has to say, is, again, this is stupid. Why are we doing this? The skipper, the crew watch, the watch captain, you guys have to listen to your teams when you say that. And you have to empower them to make those decisions and say those things to you as well. Team dissension will impact crisis response. Dissension equals hesitation. Loss of concentration happens during tasks, and all of a sudden the sequences are out of order. For example, that loss of concentration for the person that's working the winch in a person in the water or in a crew overboard situation might have a line override. Suddenly the entire sequence of recovering the person is going to be out of whack. Additionally, that dissension happens when you have loss of command and control of the vessel. And when you have loss of command and control of the vessel, and then add a crisis, this is always going to be emotional. And when that emotion happens on the vessel during a sequence of tasks which are critical, it could be critical to the recovery of the person in the water. A fragmented team will not be performing optimally, or a fragmented team will not be performing as trained. So dissension also equals, an added danger. All right. The entire dissension, if you have that going on inside of a crew, could actually cause a person to end up in the water with a crew overboard situation. But it's through those rules of racing which we gave you earlier. It's through that positive impact of leadership that you can actually train that conflict away from the crew. The time to practice communicating in an emergency. It should not be during the emergency. So simulating emergencies, simulating man overboards, simulating the crew overboard scenarios are going to be important. On the spot leadership. That safety officer in the middle of a training session should and will and must create a man overboard situation during basic trainings. That is how you practice the team. Sometimes unscripted response to a critical emergency in practice through scenario-based exercises will really enhance how to communicate in the emergency. Again, you'll do your after-action review, you'll talk about it, retrain it, do the corrective action, do it again the right way. But I think if you're going to remember one thing about dissension and command and control, I think it's always important to remember that when learning stops, losing begins. Now that losing could be a crew overboard situation. That losing could be losing a race. That losing could be a major delay or even breaking something, specifically if there's an override. The last thing you want to do is cut a line, but sometimes if you don't know how to get an override, you're going to have to do that. Now imagine having multiple situations having on a vessel because of loss of concentration, loss of unity, loss of cohesiveness in the midst of a crisis. Now you have two crises to deal with when you lose control of the boat. And finally, let's just talk about the second law of thermodynamics. That's right. Things are always degrading from one state, degrading downwards. That includes safety. So you might leave the dock at one state, but over time, as you get tired, as these events occur, it's always being degraded. So how do you rate yourself on your safety? How do you decide whether you're a good, safe crew or not? And what are the measurements? Well, as a coach at U.S. Sailing, you're going to understand that there are 3 ways to categorize performance. One is basic, one is intermediate, one is expertise. I encourage you to understand what these are also when it comes to safety. So if you're at a basic method or in a basic mode of safety or a specific task, whatever it might be, you're not going to do it right the first time. You might have to ask a lot of questions how to do it. You might have to get reinforcement on how to do it and have to review it. In your mind, the sequences aren't together, but you do know what the task is at hand. That's really basic. If we're talking about intermediate level, you move up to this level where maybe 75% of the time you might have to redo the task. Sometimes the thought or the processes don't come exactly on time or naturally. You just have to rethink about it before you do the action. You might have close to muscle memory, but in every instance, you might not have to do it. But then you have the expert. The expert doesn't have to think about it. The expert can do it. Some people say it takes 10,000 times to be a guru of a repetitive action. But that's what you're looking for on safety when you're coming to offshore sailing, when you're going around just cruising. The expert level is where you do not have to think about it. If it was my goal for everybody, a crew overboard situation would mean it would be an automatic recovery. There's some really great videos that are out there that show really cool techniques and great ways to get people out of the water. I highly encourage you to do it. Click down here below and like us, Ministry of Sailing. Our goal is to make sailing safe for everyone. But we want you to move up in safety all the time. We want you to always be training and keep moving up, up, up. Remember, things are always downgrading, but training, you can build it, reinforce, so it becomes almost muscle memory in second nature. So use this. Where's your crew? Are you basic? Are you intermediate level? Or you don't have to think about any of your drills? Is it just automatic? If that's the case, good for you. But if that is also the case and good for you, you know how much training it took for you to get there, and you have to maintain that training. All right? That's a really important task for you to do. The other thing you're going to ask is, what's your plan? If you understand you're at basic level and you want to move up to intermediate, what's your plan to move up 1 to intermediate? So like maybe 75% of the time you're hitting all the marks and you got it. You don't have to think about it all the time, but sometimes you do it. Maybe 75% of the time you do it right, but there's 25% of the time you might not be doing it right. What are you doing to, after action review your training, what are you doing to bring that training up to a level of which you start getting into the expert level of whatever the task or maneuver is going to be? I want you to move up. I want you to be a great leader. I hope that you understand that the best way to prevent a crew overboard is to stay hooked in and to stay strapped in and to have your PFDs in and to set it up the right way. Click below, link us, favorite us, like us, share us. Ministry of Sailing. We're here for you. Have a great day. Finally, if you follow our rules on velocity, the 4 rules of racing. Number 1, all right, keep people in the boat. Number 2, keep water out of the boat. Number 3, don't hit anybody. And number 4, look good doing it. If you like that, these are on our website. It's under the Rescue Swimmer. It's under www.ministryofsailing.com. Find the Rescue Swimmer, read all of it. All of our information, all of our videos for the basic training are free. Become a sailing rescue swimmer. This is now recognized as legitimate practices for offshore and any sailing if your boat really fits into the categories. We have that information for you absolutely at no cost. Thank you very much. We really appreciate you guys. Stay safe, sail safe, win races, get there faster.